Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, I'm going to touch on how to prevent complacency throughout gaining phases. So gaining phases are a time that are often quite long and monotonous, and as a result, it can be easy to let your attention to detail and your focus dwindle, and the quality of the phase can diminish quite significantly as a result of it. So when we are in a gaining phase, that's the time we make progress. That's the time we actually build tissue. When we are dieting, it's it's just a case of that's when we're revealing our muscle tissue that we've worked so hard to build while being at a calorie maintenance or calorie surplus. So we don't want to let our consistency dwindle throughout the gaining phase. Our gaining phase, ideally, we just want to be doing the same thing, just eating more food, eating more calories in the process. Obviously, it'll be a time where we have a bit more flexibility when it comes to eating out so that we can have good relationships with our family and friends, have a bit of flexibility and longevity in our approach, because when it comes to building muscle, losing body fat, or just making progress as a whole, it's a long-term endeavor, this. So if we are doing something we can't sustain over months, then it's not worth doing. So there's definitely a time and place for eating out, meals out. We just don't want to be like silly with it. And as for what complacency looks like, to start things off, it's like intentionally kind of like, although we do have like off-plan meals, etc., doing so maybe excessively, having excessive off-plan eating, where we're not accurately tracking our nutrition or accurately estimating, and we're going well and beyond what our goal is without many thought behind it. And it's there's nothing wrong, like I said, with the odd meal out here and there, but we just don't want to let our habits dwindle and creep away from us, which could include and not be limited to your sessions being missed, your water consistency being in a poor spot, your sleep habits dwindling, and starting to like just like eyeball food, not weigh things out. And that can cause the scale weight to rise faster than expected, a lack of ability to kind of hit your goals and nail your variables, which will mean your session quality will ultimately be poorer, and just having less precision across the board. So just letting those standard slips with things like your sleep routine, what time you get to bed, what time you wake up, your overall sleep duration. And as for why this happens throughout a gaining phase, you don't see the immediate consequences of your actions. When you're in a dieting phase, if you don't adhere to your nutrition goal, you get to the end of that week, you've not lost weight, or you drop performance. So you can kind of, not that we want to, but you can kind of get away with it that a little bit more when we're in a gaining phase setting, just because there's that little bit more leeway there. But we don't want to use that as a reason to have poor adherence. We don't want to use that as an excuse. And as for how we can keep our standards high when we are in that gaining phase setting, it's having non-negotiables we have in place and keep in place that do not change year round, that do not change regardless of where we are, what phase we're in. And that's going to be things like hitting your protein on a daily basis, making sure we're getting that sufficient amount of protein. That should never slip. Regardless if we're being more flexible, regardless if we're kind of eating out, or let's say you're going away for the weekend somewhere and you're maybe just gonna track a bit more loosely, we still want to make sure that protein goes hit. We still want to make sure we're having a sufficient amount of fluids on a daily basis. So sufficient hydration, which will not include water, but also having sufficient salt in your diet or electrolytes in your diet. So we get enough sodium, potassium, magnesium, the electrolytes that we get. So we want to make sure they're in place. We want to make sure our body weight's being controlled in a reasonable manner. We're not letting it tank excessively or gain excessively at any point, where we're taking our body weight, we're staying accountable to it, and we're making sure it stays in a good spot. And we also want to make sure the sleep hygiene and routine stays in a decent bit, meaning we're not having caffeine really close to bed. We're not allowing, let's say, the sleep wake time to excessively change when it comes to the weekend instead of the week. And we're not allowing things like our habits pre-bed to slip, which could entail maybe like going on social media, etc. That's like a rule I've got for myself. Like the last hour before bed, my social media is off. I am not on it at all. And that allows me that sufficient downtime so I don't burn out, for one. Two, I'll have good quality sleep as well. And also like your amount of steps you're doing on a daily basis, and just making sure you're keeping on top of your gains. So having some non-negotiables you set for yourself that you ensure get hit no matter what on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and then your progress will reflect it, and you'll move forwards and have a lot more muscle to show for it next time you diet down if we do. And we can also think about setting up a timeline. So a timeline, something I set up for my clients. If you've not got a coach, then you can put one in place yourself. I don't set it up for all clients. The reason being is it's not always warranted for some clients. They don't need to know what they're doing on every single week if they're maybe a client that is just aiming to maybe hold their body weight at this current moment of time, for example. But most clients I do, if it's warranted, I'll definitely put it in place. And what a timeline maps out is it gives you that sense of urgency. So see if I tell you in a year's time, or see if I tell you like a year from now we're aiming to be lean, and we just leave it there. You think, oh, that's fine, plenty of time. Whereas if I then state, right, we've got a 16-week dieting phase where we want to start at X body weight, we want to end at X body weight. From there, beforehand, we've got such and such weeks of gaining. In those weeks of gaining, we're looking to gain X amount per week, so we get to this start weight. We don't want to go higher because that will mean more work to do with the diet. It gives you a vision of how your long-term goals are mapping out. It gives you that sense of urgency. Gives you that sense of motivation, because you can see what you're doing on that week-to-week basis is going to contribute towards your long-term goals. So you can map out roughly when you look to spend dieting, gaining, and that gives you a sense of urgency, because what turned into a year has then turned into a lot less than a year, maybe only 30 weeks of gaining, which is only 30 opportunities to progress each session, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. That will, of course, fly by. So having a timeline in place can give you that sense of urgency, and ensure you're keeping yourself accountable and not becoming complacent to gaining too fast, because you can have a structure of how much you'll look to gain on a monthly basis or so. And that can hold you accountable if you don't have a coach to do so. And what you can also do is highlight the importance of your sessions. So it's easy to think, just it's a case of just getting in, training that body part. Doesn't really matter that much. Whereas if you go into each session, you view each session as an opportunity to step forward towards your goals. That can help massively. So every set, every session is an opportunity to step forward and progress, and visualize like what you want to look like. What do you want to achieve next time you diet down? And that can keep your motivation high and your drive high when you're in that gaining phase. And also remember your why. Remember why you're doing it. So you can obviously twist this slightly. Like for example, part of my why is, one, I just love the process. Two, I like to lead by example for my clients. Three, I've got that ego in me of I like to be stronger than everyone else. And four, I know, like, although it's a bit far-fetched, I know me doing well in terms of my fitness endeavors, my coaching endeavors, which my own process will impact, will allow me to do well in terms of my career. Me doing well in my career and helping people will allow you to then make more money. Me making more money will allow me to be able to maybe have more time to spend with people around me, because I am more efficient with my time and I can maybe make more in a shorter duration. It will mean I will have the ability to also like provide for my family, etc. So you can see there, like, although it's not directly correlated, you can kind of twist your why slightly to intertwine with why you're working towards your goals. And everyone's got like a different why, but you can think about yours and see if you can relate that to your fitness related goal, and that can help keep you accountable up. Because if you got, or sorry, keep your standards up. Because if you've got a really big why, a why that's super important for yourself, then that will keep that drive there when you're far into a gaining phase, when you've not got anything to look forward to. You see yourself kind of look a little worse because you're gaining a bit more body fat, but you know it's going to contribute towards reaching that long-term goal. And another big tip is track your variables. So what's measured is managed. So if we can logbook our training performance, we can then ensure we're definitely progressing week to week and taking steps forward in the gym. If we can log our scale weight, we can then see what the average rate of gain is. That average rate of gain can therefore keep us accountable to not gaining too much body fat in a short period of time. It can also keep us accountable to how we're managing our off-plan meals, because if you know your calories are roundabout maintenance or very slightly above, and you're gaining a kilo, and just having rapid rates of body weight gain, then you know you can keep yourself accountable to, right, I'm clearly not having my nutrition in a good spot. I'm clearly overeating. So it keeps you accountable to it, especially if you don't have a coach. Still do so. Like if I didn't have a coach, I would still have my coaching sheets I would check in with myself with. I'd sit down on a weekly basis, overview things. I'd look, right, what's body weight doing? How's sleep been? How's my average? You can track all these variables and look at them. And the benefit of this is it gives you objective markers over feelings. So doesn't matter like how you feel, if you feel hungry or not. If you look at your data, you know your body weight's up excessively. You know you don't need a food increase. You know your food's appropriate where it is. So it keeps you accountable to keeping everything in a good spot and not letting no standards slip. Because it's very easy to do, and it happens slowly. That's the thing. It's not like all of a sudden you just like stop training. That's not what I'm on about. It's all of a sudden you just get a wee bit looser with your water intake. You just maybe go a wee bit overboard on using a bit too much high calorie sauce here and there that you don't keep consistent, which then accumulates a lot more calories. You then maybe have a bit more alcohol because you're, oh, it's all right, I'm in a gaining phase. And then before you know it, like your standards have slipped excessively across the board and your results will reflect that and you won't make much progress. And something else I think can help is setting performance goals. So that gives you a purpose, gives you a sense of urgency, and gives you a reason to show up. So if you set yourself goals that you want to be quite intimidating, you don't want to like think, right now I'm doing like 70 kilos on the chest press, my goal is to get 72 and a half. Like that's obviously not going to be that intimidating, that difficult to get long term. Instead, what we can think about when it comes to setting up performance goals is thinking about, right, I'm currently, let's say, deadlifting or doing a Romanian deadlift of 100 kilos. Think about, right, what's quite daunting to hit and what do you think's a right push, like, geez, I don't know if I can hit that. I don't know if that's realistic. Then set slightly above there and then chase that down. Make sure you do hit it. Tell yourself, I have the ability to hit this goal. I am going to hit this goal. Because then although you've got maybe like 30 weeks of gaining, you can think, right, I've not got any time to waste. I've got to hit this goal. I've got to progress X amount on this lift. I can't have poor sleep, so I'm not going to get there. So it then gives you that sense of urgency and helps you hit that long-term goal. Or hit that long-term goal and have a lot more muscle in that region to show for it, because your performance is a reflection of your muscle mass. If you're doing the leg curl and you're doing half the stack, you work it up to doing the full stack or all the weights available on that machine, your hamstring's going to be bigger. There's only so much skill we can develop and stability we can gain through body fat that are going to lift load for us. It's going to be having more contractile tissue, having more mass in your hamstring, which will equate to being able to lift more weight, because we know we need that form of progression. We need progressive overload in place in order to build muscle. So making sure we do so is super, super important. And as for form clips, this is another good one to look at. So when it comes to like our training, our form matters, especially if we're doing a movement every week, every month for like a long period of time. You might as well not just do it, but you might as well do it right. So you could make it like again, going back to non-negotiables, making sure you're taking form clips and you're assessing your execution on that week-to-week basis, because it's very easy to chase numbers and then your form slips, your lowering phase gets faster. You're maybe going back to maybe a leg curl example, your hips start moving when you drive your heels back. You're getting less range of motion. So the quality diminishes, the injury risk increases, and the stimulus drops, and resulting in getting less from each set, getting less from each session, which will stack up, especially if you do that over weeks, months, like I said. I think, because a good example is like if you change like a degrees of like a gun, a rocket you're going to launch off, a missile, whatever. If you change it a couple of degrees, that's a tiny amount, but because of how far it's going to maybe travel, that can land in a extremely different region or area, if that makes sense. That was a very random example and analogy, but I hope you get the drift there. So you uphold your consistency with sending form clips to your coach, or if you've not got a coach, taking form clips for yourself to assess, so you can make sure your form stays in a good spot, so we're not just chasing load to the detriment of our form. And just to quickly summarize, gaining phases are where we make the most progress, so don't let it be a time where you let your consistency drop and your adherence dwindle. Make sure we keep things in a good spot, keep your standards high, set yourself a timeline to give you a sense of urgency, keep non-negotiables you ensure you are wanting to hit in place. Make sure you track your variables. What's measured is managed. Track your training, track your nutrition, track your water, track your steps. Even it's shown that even if you do not actually give someone like a goal with their nutrition, just getting them to track it means they're more mindful with it. I guarantee, like, if you start tracking your variables, you will then realize, oh, this could be better, that could be better, and it will give you that little bit of accountability. Even if you don't have a goal, it will allow you to just see where things are at, and then be like, right, I need to tighten this up, or maybe my steps should have a goal because they are quite low. They are lower than I thought they should be. So yeah, hope the video or episode helped. Sorry. Any questions or any topics you'd like to see, let me know. If you did enjoy the episode, then any support's massively appreciated. So drop me a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify or Apple, feel free to drop me a follow and a rating and review. All support's massively appreciated. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day.